Captain Jake Morrison was sipping his third cup of coffee when warning sirens began wailing throughout the ship. He set down his mug and stared at the main display of the USS Liberty. 300 gleaming vessels had suddenly materialized near Earth. They looked like massive diamonds drifting through the darkness of space. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," announced Lieutenant Lisa Parker. She was fighting back a grin, though Jake could tell she was struggling to keep her expression neutral. "Put it on screen," Jake commanded. The display filled with the image of a towering alien being. It possessed 4 arms, violet skin, and wore elaborate golden garments. Its voice resonated with authority and formality. "Greetings, simple 2-legged creatures of the third world. We are the Galactic Empire, masters of 47 solar systems. You will now bow to our kind leadership and become part of our magnificent realm." Jake blinked slowly. He glanced around the bridge at his officers. Commander Rick Davis was raising his eyebrows in surprise. Lieutenant Parker was chewing her lip to prevent laughter. Even the normally serious Chief Engineer Bob Wilson was shaking his head with amusement. Thanks for the invitation," Jake said into the microphone. "But we're doing fine as we are." The alien's 4 eyes grew wide with shock. "What do you mean you are fine?" "I mean, we appreciate the offer, but no thank you. We're managing quite well on our own." There was a lengthy silence. The aliens appeared to be consulting with someone off camera. Then the creature turned back to Jake. "I am Admiral Zathol of the Empire. Perhaps you fail to grasp our meaning. We are offering you the opportunity to join our great civilization. You will receive our protection and wisdom." "That's very kind of you," Jake responded. "But like I said, we're content as we are. We can look after ourselves." Admiral Zathol's purple face began darkening to a deeper shade. "In 800 years of expansion, no species has ever rejected our generous proposal." "Well, there's always a first time," Jake said cheerfully. The alien began speaking more rapidly. "You do not understand the advantages of imperial citizenship. We offer superior technology, galactic commerce, and the knowledge of our ancient culture." Jake scratched his head thoughtfully. "Listen, Admiral, I'm sure your empire is wonderful and everything, but we humans have this concept called independence. We're rather attached to it." "Independence." The alien spoke the word as if it left a bitter taste. "You cannot survive alone in the cosmos. There are threats beyond your imagination." "We've been managing okay so far," Commander Davis interjected, joining the conversation. "We've dealt with wars, plagues, natural disasters, and politicians. If we can handle politicians, we can probably handle whatever else is out there." The bridge crew chuckled softly. Admiral Zathol looked bewildered. "You make light of galactic conquest?" the alien asked. "We make light of everything," Lisa Parker said. "It's sort of our specialty." Admiral Zathol's face was now almost black with rage. "Perhaps you require a demonstration of our might. We possess weapons capable of destroying entire worlds." Jake leaned back in his chair. "That's not very friendly. We have weapons too, you know. Ever heard of nuclear bombs? Nuclear weapons are primitive technology," the alien scoffed. "Maybe so, but we have plenty of them. And we have this idea called mutually assured destruction. Basically, if you destroy us, we destroy you too. Nobody wins." The alien stared at Jake for a long moment. "You would annihilate yourselves rather than surrender." "We'd prefer not to annihilate anyone," Jake said. "But we're not fond of the whole surrender concept. We've had bad experiences with that in the past." Admiral Zathol was clearly struggling to comprehend this. "But we are offering you paradise, structure, organization, meaning." "We already have meaning," Jake replied. "We're exploring space, creating art, falling in love, and trying to figure out how to make pizza taste better in zero gravity." "That's meaningful enough for us." "Pizza?" the alien asked weakly. "It's food, round and flat with cheese and tomato sauce. Sometimes we add other things to it. It's quite good." The alien delegation on the screen began chattering among themselves in their native language. It sounded like a group of angry cats in an argument. Finally, Admiral Zathol turned back to the humans. "We will give you time to reconsider. But know this, the Empire always achieves its goals." "Sure thing," Jake said. "Take all the time you need. We'll be right here." The screen went dark. The bridge fell quiet for a moment. "Captain," said Lieutenant Parker, Should we be concerned? Jake looked at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for instructions. These were good people. They had families back on Earth. They had lives and dreams and hopes for the future. Probably, he said. But worrying never solved anything. Bob, how are our defenses? Chief Engineer Wilson grinned. All systems are running smoothly, Captain. And I've got a few surprises those fancy aliens haven't seen yet. Good. Rick, get me a connection to Earth Command. They'll want to know about our new neighbors. Already working on it, sir, Commander Davis replied. Jake picked up his coffee mug and took a drink. It had gone cold, but it still tasted good. He gazed out at the alien fleet in the distance. They were beautiful ships, he had to admit, like floating jewels against the blackness of space. Captain, Lisa Parker said quietly, do you think they'll attack? Jake shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. But if they do, they're going to learn something about humans they probably don't realize. What's that, sir? We don't like bullies, and we really don't like being told what to do. The alien fleet began moving away from Earth, settling into a formation about 1 million kilometers out. Far enough to be safe, close enough to keep watching? Looks like they're going to think it over, Commander Davis observed. Good, Jake said. Gives us time to order pizza for the night shift. I have a feeling this is going to be a long week. As the USS Liberty continued its orbit around Earth, Jake Morrison couldn't help but smile. Somewhere out there, an alien admiral was probably having the worst day of his 800-year career. And it was all because a bunch of humans couldn't stop being themselves. The stars looked the same as they always had. But everything had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. They had neighbors now. Neighbors with big ships and bad attitudes. But they also had something the aliens didn't seem to understand. They had each other. And sometimes that was enough. A week passed without any word from the alien fleet. Then the message came through. We request a formal diplomatic meeting, Admiral Zethol announced on the main screen of the USS Liberty. We will send our most skilled cultural expert to negotiate your peaceful integration into our empire. Captain Jake Morrison nodded. Sounds reasonable. Where do you want to meet? We will construct a neutral meeting station. It will be ready in 3 days. Jake looked at Commander Rick Davis, who shrugged. Sounds fair to me, Jake said. 3 days later, the aliens had built what looked like a giant crystal palace floating in space. It was beautiful and impressive, with lights and decorations that sparkled like diamonds. Ships moved around it in perfect formation. The human delegation was much smaller. Secretary of State Mary Collins led the group, along with General Pete Rodriguez and Dr. Amy Watson, a scientist who studied alien life. They traveled in a simple shuttle to the meeting station. When they docked, they were met by hundreds of aliens. There were guards in shining armor, musicians with strange instruments, and officials carrying elaborate banners. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Kretel, who was even taller than Admiral Zathol and wore robes covered in jewels. Welcome to this historic moment, Ambassador Kretel said in his deep voice. Today marks the beginning of your species' journey into the greater galaxy. Mary Collins smiled politely. Thank you for the invitation. This is quite a setup you have here. The aliens led them through halls decorated with art from dozens of different worlds. Everything was perfect and organized. Not a single item was out of place. They entered a huge meeting room with a table that could seat 100 people. The aliens had prepared thick books of documents, maps of the galaxy, and what looked like contracts written in golden ink. Ambassador Kretal gestured to a stack of papers. This is our standard integration treaty. It contains 847 pages detailing the terms of your membership in the Empire. General Rodriguez whistled. That's a lot of paperwork. Indeed. We have sections on tribute payments, loyalty oaths, military service requirements, and cultural adaptation protocols. Mary Collins reached into her bag and pulled out a single piece of paper. She placed it on the giant table. What is this? Ambassador Kretal asked, staring at the small document. Our response, Mary said. The paper had one sentence written on it. Earth passes on your generous offer. Have a nice day. Humanity. The ambassador picked up the paper and read it several times. His advisors gathered around him, talking in whispers. This is not how diplomacy works, Ambassador Kretol said finally. There must be lengthy negotiations, formal ceremonies, gradual integration processes. Why? Dr. Watson asked. She was taking notes and seemed fascinated by everything she saw. Because that is how it has always been done. Dr. Watson nodded. That makes sense for you, but we do things differently. Ambassador Kretol seemed confused. But we have brought gifts, advanced technology, to share with your primitive world. What kind of technology? General Rodriguez asked. The aliens proudly began their demonstration. They showed off faster-than-light communication devices that could send messages across the galaxy instantly. They displayed energy shields that could protect entire cities. They presented food machines that could create any meal from basic materials. The humans watched politely and clapped at the appropriate moments. Very impressive, Mary Collins said. Would you like to see some of our technology? Dr. Watson pulled out her phone and showed it to Ambassador Kretol. This is a communication device. I can talk to anyone on Earth instantly. I can also play games, order food, watch movies, read books, and access all of human knowledge. The ambassador stared at the small device. How do you power such advanced technology? I plug it into the wall when the battery gets low, Dr. Watson said cheerfully. The wall? Yeah, we have electricity everywhere. Powers everything. Ambassador Kretol looked at his advisors. They seemed as confused as he was. General Rodriguez pulled out his tablet. We use these for military planning, real-time battlefield information, satellite imagery, communication with troops anywhere on the planet. But how do you manufacture such devices? One of the alien advisors asked. Factories. We make millions of them. Pretty much everyone has one. The aliens spent several minutes examining the human devices, passing them around and talking in their strange language. This is impossible, Ambassador Kretol said. Such technology requires massive industrial infrastructure and centuries of development. We've had factories for a couple hundred years, Mary Collins said. Started with making cloth, moved on to cars, now we make everything. Dr. Watson was looking at the alien food machine. How does this work? It rearranges matter at the molecular level to create any desired substance, Ambassador Kretol explained proudly. Cool. We have something similar. Dr. Watson showed them pictures on her phone. These are 3D printers. We can make tools, machine parts, even houses. This one here prints with chocolate. Chocolate. It's food. Sweet and delicious. We eat it for fun. The ambassador was looking more and more frustrated. You speak of doing things for fun. What is the purpose of this? General Rodriguez laughed. Fun is the purpose. Life's too short to be serious all the time. But without purpose, how do you maintain order? We don't need much order, Mary Collins said. People mostly get along fine on their own. Ambassador Kretol was turning a darker shade of purple. Impossible. Civilization requires structure, rules, authority. We have rules, General Rodriguez said. Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. And try to be nice. Works pretty well. Dr. Watson was still fascinated by the alien technology. Can I ask you something? Why do you want to conquer other planets? We do not conquer. We liberate. We bring order to chaos. But what if people are happy with their chaos? Ambassador Kretol stared at her. Happy? What does happiness have to do with governance? The three humans looked at each other. Everything, Mary Collins said. The whole point of government is to help people be happy and free. Free. The ambassador said the word like it was poison. Freedom leads to disorder, chaos, suffering. Sometimes, General Rodriguez admitted. But it also leads to great things. Art, music, exploration, love. These things serve no function. Dr. Watson smiled. They serve the most important function of all. They make life worth living. The meeting continued for several more hours, but it only got more confusing for both sides. The aliens could not understand why humans would choose uncertainty over security. The humans could not understand why anyone would give up freedom for order. Finally, Ambassador Kretol ended the meeting. We will need time to consider this. Your species is unusual. As the humans prepared to leave, Dr. Watson asked one more question. Can I ask what you do for fun in your empire? Ambassador Kretol looked puzzled. Fun is not necessary. We have purpose. But what makes you happy? The ambassador thought for a long moment. I do not understand the question. As their shuttle flew back toward Earth, the three humans sat in silence for a while. "That was sad," Dr. Watson said finally. "Yeah," General Rodriguez agreed. 800 years of conquering, and they've never learned how to smile. Mary Collins was looking out at the stars. "I think we're about to teach them something they didn't expect to learn." "What's that?" Dr. Watson asked. "That maybe, just maybe, they're the ones who need to be liberated." Admiral Zathol was angry. The diplomatic meeting had been a disaster. These humans did not understand their place in the galaxy. They needed to see the true power of the Empire. "Prepare the stellar destroyer," he ordered his crew aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion. "We will show them what happens to those who refuse our generous offer." The alien fleet moved into position around a small asteroid near Earth. It was about the size of a city block, spinning slowly in space. Admiral Zathol opened a communication channel to Earth. "Humans of the third planet," his voice boomed across space, "you have refused our offer of peace. Now you will witness the power that has conquered 47 star systems. Watch and understand your fate if you continue to resist." Captain Jake Morrison was back on the bridge of the USS Liberty. He looked at the alien formation with interest. "Looks like they're planning a light show. Sir, should we move to a safer distance?" Lieutenant Lisa Parker asked. "Nah, we're fine here. Let's see what they can do." The alien ships began to glow. Energy flowed between them like lightning, creating patterns of light that were beautiful to watch. The humans on nearby stations and ships stopped what they were doing to look. "This is actually pretty impressive," Commander Rick Davis said, watching the display. The aliens spent almost an hour charging their weapon. Energy built up across multiple ships, creating a web of power that connected the entire fleet. The space around them crackled with electricity. Admiral Zathol's voice came over the communication system again. "Behold the stellar destroyer, the same weapon that reduced the Corfac rebellion to dust. The same force that shattered the defenses of Zerion Prime." "He's really proud of this thing," Jake observed. The weapon fired. A beam of pure energy, thicker than a building and brighter than the sun, struck the asteroid. The rock exploded in a brilliant flash of light and debris. Pieces flew in all directions like fireworks. The alien fleet sat in formation, waiting for the humans to respond with terror and surrender. Instead, Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication channel, sounding impressed but casual. "Hey, that was pretty neat. Want to see something cool?" Before Admiral Zathol could respond, a small human ship appeared near another asteroid. It was a beat-up mining vessel called the Betty Sue, with rust stains and scratched paint. The ship looked like it had been working in space for 20 years. "This is Captain Roy Tucker of the Betty Sue," a voice said with a Texas accent. "Y'all want to see what we use to clear space junk?" The mining ship moved close to the asteroid. There was no big display of power, no charging time, no dramatic music. Roy Tucker just flipped a switch. The asteroid vanished. Not exploded, not destroyed. It simply disappeared completely as if it had never existed. The alien fleet sat in stunned silence. "What?" Admiral Zathol whispered. Captain Morrison's voice came back on the channel. "Experimental matter-displacement drive. We've been testing it on space debris. Works pretty well for cleaning up our orbital lanes." "How is this possible?" the Admiral demanded. "Oh, it's not that complicated." A new voice joined the conversation. "This is Dr. Sarah Kim. I invented the device. It uses quantum field manipulation to displace matter into parallel dimensional space. Basically, we just move things somewhere else." Dr. Kim spoke like she was explaining how to change a flat tire. Her voice was cheerful and excited, the way people sound when they get to talk about their favorite hobby. "The tricky part was getting the calculations right," she continued. "Took us about 6 months to work out the math. But once we figured out the quantum resonance patterns, it was just a matter of building the right equipment." Admiral Zathol was having trouble processing what he had just seen. "This is a weapon of unimaginable power." "Weapon?" Dr. Kim sounded confused. "It's not a weapon. It's a garbage disposal system. We got tired of space junk cluttering up our satellites. But the military applications, I guess you could use it as a weapon," Dr. Kim said thoughtfully, "but that would be kind of wasteful. It's much better for cleaning things up." Captain Roy Tucker's voice came back on the line. Hell, we use smaller versions of these things back home to clear tree stumps. Real handy for construction work. The alien leadership was having an emergency meeting on their flagship. Admiral Zethol could hear them arguing in the background. "You have tree stumps?" one of the aliens asked weakly. "Sure do. Big old things, hard to dig out with regular equipment. Sarah's machine makes it easy. Just point and click and they're gone." Dr. Kim was getting more excited. "We're working on a bigger version for asteroid mining. Should be able to move entire mountains if we get the power requirements right." "Mountains?" Admiral Zethol asked. "Well, small mountains, maybe hills. We want to terraform Mars, and it would be easier if we could move some of the rock around." Lieutenant Parker was watching the alien fleet through the Liberty's sensors. "Sir, I think they're having some kind of breakdown over there." Jake looked at the readings. Several alien ships were moving erratically, and their communication channels were full of panicked chatter. "Admiral," Jake said, "are you okay over there?" There was a long pause before Zdal answered. "How long have you possessed this technology?" "About 8 months," Dr. Kim replied. "We finished the first working prototype last winter. Been testing it on space junk ever since? And you use it for garbage disposal and construction and mining. Roy's been using it to help build the new Mars colony ships." "Mars colony," Captain Morrison chuckled. "Oh, yeah. We're planning to move about 50,000 people to Mars next year. Should be fun. You are colonizing other worlds. Just the one for now. Well, we've got some research stations on Europa and Titan, but Mars is the first real colony. The alien fleet was definitely having some kind of crisis. Ships were breaking formation, and their communication channels sounded like a bunch of people having nervous breakdowns." "Sir," Commander Davis said quietly, "I think we broke them." "Seems that way," Jake replied. "Dr. Kim, maybe tone down the technical details a bit. I think they're having trouble keeping up." "Oh, sorry," Dr. Kim said. "I get excited when I talk about quantum mechanics. Most people find it boring. Most people don't have your brain." Captain Tucker laughed. "Hell, I still don't understand how that thing works, and I've been using it for months." Admiral Zethol's voice came back on the communication channel, sounding strained. We need to discuss this development with our superiors. The fleet will withdraw to consider these new circumstances." "Sure thing," Jake said. "Take all the time you need. We'll be here." As the alien fleet began moving away from Earth, the humans watched with amusement. "Think they'll be back?" Lisa Parker asked. "Oh, they'll be back," Jake said. "But I think next time they might be a little more polite." Dr. Kim was still on the communication channel, talking to Captain Tucker about improvements to the displacement drive. Their casual discussion of moving mountains and reshaping planets was probably giving the aliens nightmares. "You know what the funny part is?" Commander Davis said. "What's that?" "They spent an hour charging up their superweapon to blow up one little asteroid. Roy did the same thing in about 3 seconds, and he was just cleaning up space junk." Jake laughed. "I think they're starting to realize they might have picked the wrong species to mess with." In the distance, the alien fleet was retreating to what they probably thought was a safe distance. But after watching humans casually make asteroids disappear, Admiral Zethol was probably wondering if anywhere in the galaxy was safe anymore. Director Velmoth arrived at Earth 2 weeks later with the biggest pile of paperwork the galaxy had ever seen. His ship was filled with clerks, accountants, and form processing specialists. If the Empire could not convince humans through force or diplomacy, perhaps they could be overwhelmed with the proper application of bureaucracy. "Humans of Earth," Director Velmoth announced over the communication channels. "I am the Chief Administrative Officer of the Galactic Empire. I have come to explain the practical benefits of Imperial membership." Captain Jake Morrison was getting tired of alien visitors, but he remained polite. "Sure thing. What can we do for you?" "I will present a comprehensive analysis of Imperial services. Please send your financial and administrative officials to my vessel." The human response team was led by Karen Brown from the Department of State and Dan Miller from the Treasury Department. They brought coffee and sandwiches to what they assumed would be a long meeting. Director Velmoth met them in a conference room that looked like a library had exploded. Papers covered every surface. Charts hung from the walls. Filing cabinets lined the corridors. The alien wore thick glasses and carried 3 different clipboards. "Welcome to the presentation," Director Velmoth said, adjusting his glasses. First, let me explain our healthcare system. He unrolled a chart that was 20 feet long and covered in tiny writing. Imperial healthcare covers all citizens across 47 star systems. We have standardized medical procedures, approved treatment protocols, and efficient resource allocation. Karen Brown looked at the chart and took a sip of her coffee. That's impressive. What about pre-existing conditions? Pre-existing conditions require Form 847B, submitted in triplicate, with a waiting period of 6 to 18 months for approval. 6 to 18 months? Yes. The forms must be reviewed by the Medical Assessment Board, then forwarded to the Planetary Health Council, then approved by the Imperial Medical Authority. Karen nodded. We implemented universal health care on Earth about 30 years ago. Free at the point of service. No forms required. Director Velmoth blinked. Free? How do you manage resource allocation without proper documentation? Doctors treat sick people. We pay for it with taxes. Works pretty well. The alien made notes on his clipboard. But who determines treatment priorities? The doctors and patients mostly. Without administrative oversight? We trust our doctors to know what they're doing. Director Velmoth looked horrified. Trust without forms? Dan Miller was examining another chart about imperial currency. Tell me about this standardized credit system. Director Velmoth brightened. This was clearly his favorite topic. The imperial credit is based on energy output calculations multiplied by resource availability coefficients, adjusted for planetary production indices and trade balance fluctuations. He showed them a formula that took up an entire wall. Every transaction requires verification through the Central Banking Authority, with exchange rate calculations updated daily based on imperial economic indicators. Dan pulled out his phone and showed them an app. We have 17 different digital currencies on Earth. This one here tracks the value of cute cat pictures. It's worth about $40 billion right now. Cat pictures? Yeah, people really like cats. We also have traditional money, digital assets, and something called meme stocks. Meme stocks? Stocks that people buy because they think they're funny. Sometimes they make people rich, sometimes they don't. It's kind of like gambling, but with more jokes. Director Velmoth was writing frantically on his clipboard. How do you maintain economic stability without centralized control? We don't really, Dan admitted. The market goes up and down. People make money, people lose money. But somehow it all works out in the end. That sounds terrifying. It keeps things interesting. The presentation continued with education. Director Velmoth explained the Imperial Learning System, where all knowledge was standardized and approved by the Educational Council. Students learned the same lessons across all worlds, ensuring consistency and order. Dr. Rachel Green, Earth's Education Secretary, had joined the meeting by video call. That sounds very organized. How do you handle creativity and innovation? Creativity is managed through approved channels. Innovation requires authorization from the Research and Development Board. What if someone has a new idea? They submit Form 342C with supporting documentation. If approved, they may proceed with supervised experimentation. Dr. Green laughed. Our kids learn everything from ancient history to quantum physics. Then they go out and invent things we never thought of. Last month, a 12-year-old built a working fusion reactor for her science fair project. A 12-year-old? Yeah, she got the idea from watching online videos. All our educational content is free on the internet. Director Velmoth was starting to look overwhelmed. Free? How do you control information distribution? We don't. Anyone can learn anything they want. But chaos, disorder. People might learn things they are not supposed to know. Like what? Karen Brown asked. Like how to think for themselves. The humans looked at each other. That's kind of the point, Dan Miller said gently. The final part of the presentation covered government structure. Director Velmoth explained the imperial hierarchy, with the emperor at the top, followed by regional governors, system administrators, planetary directors, and local supervisors. Every decision flows through proper channels, he said proudly. Orders come from above. Reports go upward. Perfect organization. Who's your emperor? Karen asked. His Supreme Excellence Korvac the Eternal? Ruler of all known space, commander of infinite fleets, master of 1,000 worlds. Sounds impressive. How did he get the job? He inherited it from his father, who inherited it from his father, who conquered the original 12 systems 800 years ago. What if people don't like him? Director Velmoth looked confused. Not like the Emperor? That is impossible. He is the Emperor. But what if he makes bad decisions? The Emperor does not make bad decisions. He is the Emperor. Karen tried a different approach. What if the people want someone else to be in charge? The people do not choose their leaders. Leaders are born to rule. Dan Miller shook his head. We tried that system once. Didn't work out so well. So we got rid of our king and started electing our leaders. Electing? People vote for who they want to be in charge. If the leader does a bad job, we vote for someone else next time. Director Velmoth dropped his clipboard. The people choose their own rulers? Every few years. It's called democracy. But who tells them who to choose? Nobody. They decide for themselves. The alien sat down heavily in his chair. His face had gone pale green. This is madness. Pure chaos. How does anything get done? We argue a lot, Karen admitted. But somehow we muddle through. Arguing about government policy. In public? Sure, it's called debate. Sometimes it gets pretty heated, but that's how we figure out the best solutions. Director Velmoth was hyperventilating. Citizens arguing with their government? Citizens are the government, Dan explained. We elect representatives to speak for us, but they work for us, not the other way around. The alien made a strange, choking sound. This is the most terrifying thing I have ever heard. Really? Dr. Green asked over the video call. We think it's pretty normal. Normal? People governing themselves is normal? Well, yeah. How else would you do it? Director Velmoth stared at the humans for a long moment. Then he began gathering his papers with shaking hands. I need to report back to my superiors immediately, he said. This situation is far worse than we thought. Worse? Karen asked. What's wrong with democracy? Everything, the alien cried. You have no emperor, no central authority, no proper forms. How do you maintain order? We don't need much order, Dan said. People are pretty good at taking care of themselves. Impossible. Without strong leadership, there can only be chaos and suffering. Actually, we're pretty happy, Karen said. Free health care, good education, and we get to choose our own leaders. What more could you want? Director Velmoth clutched his papers to his chest. I must leave immediately. This planet is too dangerous. As the alien official fled back to his ship, the humans sat in the conference room finishing their sandwiches. That went well, Dan said. I think we scared him, Karen replied. Yeah, well, Dr. Green said from the video screen. Freedom tends to have that effect on people who've never experienced it. Outside, Director Velmoth's ship was already preparing to leave. The alien was probably filing an emergency report about a world where people thought for themselves and chose their own destiny. On Earth, life continued as normal. People went to work, kids went to school, and politicians argued about the best way to help everyone. It was messy and complicated and sometimes frustrating, but it was theirs. The Galactic Empire was falling apart. Admiral Zathol sat in his command chair aboard the Eternal Dominion, staring at reports that made no sense. Director Velmoth had locked himself in his quarters and refused to come out. Ambassador Kretal was asking strange questions about something called comedy. Sir, his aide reported, we're receiving requests from 17 different ships asking for permission to defect to the humans. Defect. Admiral Zathol's 4 eyes widened. That's impossible. No one defects from the Empire. They're saying they want to learn about democracy and freedom, sir. Admiral Zathol rubbed his temples. In 800 years of conquest, nothing like this had ever happened. They had come to conquer a primitive world and instead found a civilization that seemed to do everything better than they did. A message came through from Earth. It was Captain Jake Morrison. Admiral, we've been thinking. Would you like to send a small group to visit Earth for a few days? Maybe we can understand each other better. Admiral Zathol was desperate. Yes, we accept your invitation. 3 days later, a small shuttle carrying Ambassador Kretal, Director Velmoth, and 2 guards landed at a place called New York City. They were met by Dr. Amy Watson, who had volunteered to be their guide. Welcome to Earth, Dr. Watson said cheerfully. Ready for the tour? The aliens stepped out of their shuttle and immediately froze. The city was huge, full of noise and movement and chaos. Humans were everywhere, walking fast, talking loud, and going in all directions at once. "Where are the guards?" Director Velmuth asked nervously. "Where are the order keepers?" "Those are police officers over there." Dr. Watson pointed to two humans in blue uniforms who were helping an old lady cross the street. But mostly people just get along on their own. They walked through the streets, and the aliens saw things that confused them. Humans were playing music on corners just for fun. Children were laughing and running around without supervision. People were arguing about politics, but nobody was getting arrested. "This is chaos," Ambassador Kretel whispered. "This is Tuesday," Dr. Watson replied. She took them to a place called Central Park, where humans were lying on the grass, playing games and feeding birds. Families were having picnics. Couples were holding hands. An old man was teaching a young boy how to fly a kite. "What is the purpose of this?" Director Velmuth asked. "Fun," Dr. Watson said. "Relaxation, spending time with people you care about, but they're not producing anything. They're not serving the state. They're being happy. That's more important than serving the state." The aliens watched a group of teenagers playing something called basketball. They were laughing and cheering and having a great time. "These young humans," Ambassador Kretel observed, "they compete against each other, but they are not angry when they lose." "It's just a game," Dr. Watson explained. "The point is to have fun and get exercise. They play for no reward. The reward is fun." That evening, Dr. Watson took them to something called a comedy club. The aliens had never seen anything like it. Humans sat in a dark room, while one human stood on a stage and talked about everyday life in a way that made everyone laugh. The comedian was talking about the differences between men and women, about the problems of modern technology, about the strange things politicians said. The audience was laughing so hard that some of them were crying. Ambassador Kretel was fascinated. "This human makes others happy by pointing out the absurdities of existence." "Pretty much," Dr. Watson said. "And people pay to watch this?" "Sure. Laughter makes people feel good." Director Velmuth was having trouble processing this information. "But what does this accomplish? What is the productive value?" "It makes people happy," Dr. Watson repeated. "Happy people are healthier, more creative, and nicer to each other. What more do you need?" After the show, they walked through the city at night. The aliens saw humans helping each other without being ordered to do so. They saw people sharing food with strangers. They saw volunteers working at a homeless shelter, giving their time for free. "These humans help each other without being commanded," Ambassador Kretel noted. "We call it charity," Dr. Watson said. "People help because they want to help." "Without reward? Without punishment for not helping?" "Most people like helping others. It makes them feel good about themselves." Director Velmuth sat down on a park bench. "I don't understand any of this. In the Empire, people do their jobs because they are told to do their jobs. They follow orders because orders must be followed. But here, people do things because they choose to do them," Dr. Watson finished. "How do you maintain order?" "We don't need much order. Most people want the same things: safety, food, shelter, love, and the chance to be happy. When people have those things, they usually behave pretty well." The next day, they visited a school. The aliens watched human children learning about science, history, and art. The children asked questions, argued with their teachers, and came up with ideas of their own. The young humans challenged their instructors, Ambassador Kretel observed. "That's how they learn," the teacher explained. "Questions are good. Thinking for yourself is good. But what if they ask questions that have no answers? Then they try to find the answers themselves. That's how we discover new things." Director Velmuth was watching a group of children working on an art project. "What is the purpose of this activity?" "They're being creative. Art helps people express themselves, but it serves no function," the teacher smiled. "It serves the most important function of all. It helps them become human." On their final day, the aliens attended a town hall meeting where humans were discussing local issues. People stood up and spoke their minds. They disagreed with each other, sometimes loudly, but they listened to different opinions and tried to find solutions that worked for everyone. "This is your government?" Ambassador Kretel asked. "Part of it," Dr. Watson replied. "Democracy is messy, but it's ours. No one person makes all the decisions. No one person is smart enough to make all the decisions. After 3 days on Earth, the aliens were ready to return to their ship, but something had changed in them. They had seen humans living without fear, thinking for themselves, and choosing their own paths through life. As they prepared to leave, Director Velmoth made an announcement. "I wish to remain on Earth," he said quietly. "What?" Admiral Zathol's voice crackled over the communication system. "I want to learn about this democracy. I want to understand how people can govern themselves." Ambassador Cretal nodded. "I also wish to stay. I want to study this thing called humor." "You cannot be serious," Admiral Zathol said. "Actually," Ambassador Cretal replied, "I think I'm learning to be the opposite of serious." Within a week, half the alien fleet had requested permission to visit Earth. Within a month, ships were arriving from across the galaxy as news spread about a world where people were free to be themselves. Captain Jake Morrison found himself setting up an immigration office to handle all the requests for asylum. Aliens from dozens of worlds were asking to become humans, not because they wanted Earth's technology or resources, but because they wanted something they had never experienced: freedom. Admiral Zathol was the last to make the request. He transmitted a simple message to Earth. "I have served an empire for 300 years. I would like to learn what it means to serve myself." The Galactic Empire didn't fall because of war or rebellion. It fell because its citizens discovered there was a better way to live. They learned that happiness was more important than order, that freedom was more valuable than security, and that laughter was the most powerful force in the universe. And it all happened because humanity couldn't stop being human, even when faced with the might of a galactic empire. As Dr. Watson often told the refugees who arrived seeking freedom, "Welcome to Earth. Try the pizza. Learn to laugh, and remember that the best government is the one that trusts its people to govern themselves." The galaxy was never the same.